Wanted, advisors and cabinet members to the President of the United States. Requirements: must be a tough guy, a deal maker, low energy, need not apply. Well, that seems to be the overarching message that Trump is sending with his cabinet and other top-level picks. The latest, ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson, who is reportedly the new frontrunner for Secretary of State. Now, Tillerson has no diplomatic experience, but is considered a friend and ally of none other than the aforementioned Vladimir Putin. He also has done a number of big deals with Russia over oil. Though Tillerson's chummy relationship with Putin has at least 3 Senate Republicans publicly questioning if the Senate can actually confirm him, especially in light of that new Russia hacking story. Tillerson is seen as both a deal maker, something we have seen a lot of in the Trump cabinet designations, and he's also something of a tough guy, and he ain't the only one. Trump's affection for retired generals, who reportedly he knows more than, has been reported before, but it does add to the image that Trump wants tough guys on his team, a description he probably thinks fits himself as well. Okay, I don't know that that's a bad thing. I get the optics of it, Jeannie, but again here, I'm wondering if at some point, you look at the cabinet, not a ton of diversity, and more than that, not a ton of experience. Does that bother you at all?
Not a ton of experience, but you have a very wealthy cabinet, the wealthiest probably in American history. You also have a cabinet of people who have done very well in their previous positions, but who have not, as you mentioned, been in public service. But it's been interesting because of all the criticism of Trump, while he's not draining the swamp like he said he would, if you look at this cabinet, he actually is. These are people with experience, but not experience necessarily for the most part inside Washington or in public affairs. You do have some, Elaine Chao, some others, but for the most part, he's taking people from other walks of life. These are people who he seems to get along with, people who he seems to be able to communicate with. These are business folks, these are military folks. Right. And, I think for the most part, we're going to have to take a wait and see approach on this because we haven't seen any of these people in action for the most part in positions like they're going to be put into.
You're right, but this transactional type of approach here, certainly seemingly half of Goldman Sachs is going to be able to have a job either in commerce or framing economic policy. A lot of self-interest, one would think there. Tillerson over at Exxon all of a sudden, goes there. Forget the fact that, fine, he leaves. He's got a whole bunch of financial interests left behind in stocks, et cetera, at Exxon with Putin and other, let's say, environmental policies that may be changed under the Trump administration. Does that bother you at all? Or, hey, you know what? Bring people in from the outside. Sometimes you overvalue your experience, and maybe you want some fresh eyes on it. How do you look at the names you've seen so far?
Well, with regards to Tillerson, I certainly agree with Jeannie. Let's take a wait-and-see attitude and learn more from the hearings, assuming he gets officially nominated by Trump. The disturbing parts about Tillerson are that he just received the Order of Friendship from Putin. This is a relationship that goes back well over 15 years. He has no government experience, so he's used to making money for his stockholders, but not for the benefit of the United States. Others have been in that position and have done marvelously. He has some positive aspects. He's a great negotiator. He knows a lot of people internationally. He supports a carbon tax, which I think is a good thing. He
recently came out and said he believes in global warming.
He said global warming has a human element. And when he was the head of Exxon, he supported alternative energy research.
Real quickly, Andrew, I don't have a problem, as some do, with the amount of generals that we have there. My problem's always been, like at the head of the EPA, et cetera, people who take positions to run cabinets who don't even believe in the mission of the actual department they're going to run, where they want to defund, whether it be the education department or they want to get rid of environmental protections and the head of the EPA, and I can go on here. That's my bigger issue, but do you think the constant or the common DNA of who's picked here is a problem?
I'm a little concerned about all the generals that are in there because military people tend to find military solutions to international problems where diplomacy often would suit better.
Some are reluctant warriors.
Some of them are, but we have no idea who, with these guys. I also have a little bit of a problem with Tillerson too, just because every time he's negotiated with Putin, they've each had something that the others wanted. Putin wants to sell his oil. Exxon wants to get at the oil. What happens when you're in so many of the positions in international diplomacy where you're trying to get people to give you something and you're not giving them anything in return, or you don't have something to offer each other? A lot of this stuff needs to be done gently. Look at the relationship with China over what we've been doing with Taiwan, and it's not necessarily the tough guy in the room that always gets the benefit in those situations.
So the question is, to Andrew's point about the generals, who will be watching over these generals, these tough guys, to make sure that their read of the international scene is what they say it is? Well, probably not President Trump. And I say that because President-elect hasn't been receiving the presidential daily briefings that have been offered to him. One of the most confidential, secret-laden reports in the world. And it happens pretty much daily, but he hasn't looked at it in more than a week now. Instead, he's letting his vice president-elect, Mike Pence, take the briefings. Trump was asked about that decision this weekend. Here's what he had to say.
You are getting the presidential daily brief only once a week.
Well, I get it when I need it.
But is there some skepticism?
First of all, these are very good people that are giving me the briefings. And I say, if something should change from this point, immediately call me. I'm available on 1 minute's notice. I don't have to be told, I'm like a smart person. I don't have to be told the same thing and the same words every single day for the next 8 years.
Two things, Steve. Really? You can't make time here to get the daily briefing? And the second thing is, you're going to outsource this to your VP? Whether you like it or not, people voted for you at the top of the ticket here, figuring that you were going to be the guy making the calls. Is this a preview of what we get the next 4 years? That he's, that whole story that he told Kasich reportedly, his kid, you run domestic and foreign policy and we'll just make America awesome. Whether that happened or not, you don't dismiss it when you hear stuff like this.
Well, this is really about management style, and we don't know yet whether Trump's management style is a good one for the country or not.
Well, how can you manage if you don't have the information?
He said, I get the briefing once a week, and anything new, I can be awakened or contacted 24/7 if there's something new.
I'm not going to let that fly. Hold on a second.
It's management
every
style.
president since Nixon, who didn't trust the CIA, has received every day the briefing, including in there George W. Bush that everybody made jokes about, okay? They at least saw a value to be informed on a daily basis. Trump knows more than everybody else?
Well, I'll give you one more. During the campaign, Trump criticized Obama for allegedly not getting a daily briefing, which was an untrue thing, because Obama did get daily, multiple daily briefings about the intelligence situation around the world. But let's keep our powder dry, as they said in the American Revolution, and wait and see about Trump's management style, whether it works for the country.
It seems incurious.
Most people can only remember one presidential daily briefing in American history. It's the one that said bin Laden determined to attack in the United States. One president missed that apparently in the details. At least he actually got the briefing.
Well, and here's the other part of this, is the reason you also want the daily briefing is because as president, you want to know what questions to ask. And it's very difficult to know what questions to ask unless you're getting that briefing on a daily basis. And that is part of the concern here amongst intelligence folks. There's a reason it's done daily.
And by the way, to your point, Jeannie, if you're this chief executive and you don't like the briefing that you're getting and it's not complete enough
You
and
can
it's not
change it.
tell them what additional information
Yes.
you want. But okay, coming up next here, we pivot to the efforts to protect college students from things they don't like. We've heard about trigger warnings, safe spaces, but the question is shielding kids from points of view they don't like doing them and the nation a disservice, and does that connect here to the presidential election we just had? One we will explain, as one columnist says the answer to that last question is a resounding yes. Stay with us.